we're going to be talking a lot about Anita as a promoter, because more than anything else, she was a promoter of the arts in Marquette and a big collector. But probably the very first thing she promoted, besides the right to wear a raccoon coat, was her husband. So Northern got a new president sometime in the 1920s, and there was a reception for him. And she went to the reception and she said, "My husband, Gunther Meyland, is the smartest professor at this university. He should be department chair." He was not made department chair, and I gather the president was somewhat offended that she had taken this upon herself. But it's classic that she would do it.
There's a shot of her in the winter with some of her activities, and that's her with a giant ski. Part of a lot of the winter carnivals. I think some of the queens were also part of these carnivals, but I love this one. It's a giant ski, and that's Anita, second from the end there, smiling. And this is some of the Upper Peninsula Development Bureau, who sponsored a lot of the winter sports, and she was very involved with that.
And so, remind me later, actually I'll right now tell you some things she collected, because we're mostly going to be talking about promotion and starting with the winter sports. But here's a partial list of the things she collected, okay? She was a nationally recognized button collector. At the time that she died, she had 100 stocking boxes. Remember stocking boxes? You know, they had 3 pairs of nylons in them, those sort of flat boxes. She had 100 stocking boxes of buttons. So she collected buttons, she collected pottery, she collected blue and white china, art supplies, books, antique linens, vintage clothes, spinning wheels and looms, miniature oil lamps, baskets, tin molds, candlesticks, and woodenware. A partial list of what she collected. So winter carnivals and queens. This starts probably as starting with the WPA. So when the WPA, Work Project Administration, was here, and she talks about it being about the time they painted the mural in the post office. One of the things the WPA was encouraging tourism in the UP. They saw that, we were probably not going to have a lot of other money generating activities. And so there were these winter festivals, and she gets involved. And one of the things she's doing is she is deciding winter festivals ought to have queens. And she has a great story about the 1938 Winter Carnival, where she persuaded the governor of Michigan to come up to Ishpeming. And here's a description from the Mining Journal. She said he froze his butt off. Promptly at 7:30, so we're already dark, right, in the winter, right? The program gets underway with the pageant of the queens. A fanfare of trumpets will announce the opening of the program, and the Ishpeming Industrial Band and a color guard will start the procession across 280 feet of ice to an evergreen throne at the far end of the rink. Back of them will come 80 of ski riders, their skis at attention. They will march down the middle of the ice, then retreat to the sides, where they will hold their skis horizontally to act as a barrier to the crowds pressing in from the sides. The mayor will bring the governor over to the throne. So this is the sort of thing we're doing at these winter carnivals. And she talks a lot, and we'll talk a lot about the queens, and you'll see more of the queens. I love this. I haven't seen
these
this
are some of this is in the Palestra, some of the shots taken during another one of the queen contests.
Right, and I think we saw one.
And all the photos that were submitted, some of them are just funny. That's Miss Ironwood, and we'll go back, I think now, that's the last of the winter.
And there was one even during the war they had, and I know you had a picture earlier up there.
We'll see that. That was the big shot. This is her now, I think, on a trip to Mackinac Island with the Queens. That is the UP Fair Queen of 1941. So she was always chaperoning these ladies on different trips. Here she is on a speedboat to Mackinac Island with one of the queens.
And so she had a story. So she really encouraged artists. But she sort of realized not everybody could be an artist. And so maybe if you couldn't be an artist, you could be the potato queen, or the strawberry queen, or the queen of Amasa, or whatever. And one of the
Oh yeah,
stories,
here they are.
there they are. She never drove. She never learned how to drive. She never learned how to type. But so she's taking the bus everywhere, going with other people, flying places. We see all of that. She talks about one time when the Strawberry Queen from Lance, I think, or Chassel, of course, the Strawberry Queen from Chassel, she's won the UP State Fair Queen, and she's going down to compete downstate, and somehow the good people of Chassel decided the Strawberry Queen has to carry several crates of strawberries because they have to serve you strawberry shortcake, at this dinner honoring the Strawberry Queen. And Anita complains that there was strawberry all over the back of the car, whoever car it was who was driving them down to the festival. So you can see some of these, yes,
Yeah,
they're just
absolutely.
all these different.
Oh, there was just boxes of these. She kept every photo from every one of these ladies over the years. That was the governor, Soapy Williams. He's in a lot of these shots. I think he had an eye for some of the queens, the way he's looking at her, and quite a few other shots. And here, these are just some of the typical.
There's the Dairy Queen, I'm
She's
pretty
the
sure.
Dairy Queen, okay. Here's one that, kind of an artistic photograph. They drew in her fishing rod here. I thought that was clever. Oh, here's the big ship from 1941.
From the Ice Fest, right, from one of the winter carnivals.
Yeah,
Right.
they built this huge, and of course she was part of that because there's the Queen out in front of that ship in 1941.
Is that a real ship or did they? Is that
No, it's
made
ice.
out
It's
of
made
ice.
of ice.
There's
It's
quite
ice
a
sculpted.
story.
Oh,
my God.
This is a famous story, and a lot of photos of this. Everybody took pictures of this, but.
What is the story? I don't.
Paviglia, I'm trying to remember his last name. One man kind of took this over, and he was sort of a sculptor, and there's a whole history about this. If you Google it, I'm sure
Oh
it'll
my
pop
gosh.
up. Oh yeah, there's a lot written about it, but that was 1941, and that was right in, I think, the Lower Harbor,
Oh.
if I'm not mistaken.
Oh my God.
No kidding.
There's another shot of
Oh,
it
yeah.
with a couple of military men posing. But yeah, she was very involved during World War II, and I think it was the Civil Defense Corps that her and Gunther were involved in. In fact, here's that letter that I think 1943, single ladies between 20 and 49, all the streets. This was.
Yeah, so here's part of what she was doing in World War II. And I'm sure this is not a whole list. Actually, she mentions that despite all of her official things, she was having blackout parties. And mentions that at one of the blackout parties, there was a couple caught in a compromising position under her table. So during the war, she was head of volunteers. She was very involved in trying to recruit women for the Women Army Corps, for the WACs. She was trying very hard to recruit WACs. She thought that there were plenty of women in the UP who could be WACs. And so she and a group of friends did a block by block search in Marquette for every single woman between the ages of 21 and 49 to see who might be persuaded to join the WACs. And there she is, swearing in a bunch of them. She did find out that a number of the people who did show up were not suitable for various reasons, including some criminal records, or they'd been secretly married, or various other things. She ran the induction center, and this is the induction center. So every person being drafted into the Army or being enlisted in the Army from the UP came to Marquette, where they were getting physicals, they were getting sorted out before they went on trains and were shipped out to basic training. So they had to find lodging and things to do for all these young men as they're coming here. So what she is doing at the induction center is she puts together a list of, somewhere I have this, I believe 400 volunteers who are keeping the place going basically from 7 in the morning until 11 at night. They're doing meals for everybody. They are setting up, so here's the canteen, right?
This is the upstairs of the Palestra Ice
Right.
Arena.
Oh.
So they're setting up ping pong tables, they're finding lodging for everybody, they're getting together a library, they're finding magazines, they're just setting up many dances. All the young women of town were encouraged to come and help entertain. And they did. Hundreds and hundreds of local women came to help out at the induction center. And she was in charge. She was in charge of this. She was in charge of recruiting the volunteers, making sure they got all the food, making sure they got all the supply. After it was over, playing cards, everything, ping pong tables. After the war was over, she was the person in charge of getting rid of all this stuff. You know, so pool tables would go to a fraternity house somewhere, a ping pong table would go somewhere. But again, just this sort of huge amount of stuff that she's in charge of. So she was doing that. She's running the induction center. She's recruiting WACs. In 1941, she's president of the American Legion Auxiliary. She was chair of the Navy Relief Committee. She was a member of the Salvage Committee. Good timing, good timing. So this is a story from the Mining Journal. They did collect 300 pounds of salvaged furs. The article in the Mining Journal mentioned that there were some elderly women who wanted to contribute their only fur coats, but they were told to hold on to them until everybody who had more than one fur coat had contributed. The hide of a collie dog, beloved pet, might have made a nice neck piece for Mrs. Peterson, but her son wanted it to be contributed. It was described as a beautiful piece of fur, lovelier in texture and coloring than most fox furs. So somewhere in Northern Europe or in Scandinavia or on the Western Front, there was a soldier wearing Mrs. Peterson's collie's fur lining his hat or his vest.
So they use those furs to line clothing then? Is that
Yes,
what? Oh.
absolutely. Line clothing, line hats, absolutely. Line, gloves, everything, because it was cold. Yep, so here we are, we're taking waste fats, because you can make gunpowder out of waste fats. So they're just collecting everything they possibly can collect. And so she's in charge of this. Oh, she's a member of this. She's a member of the Salvage Committee. And she talked.
This is the Civil Defense Corps on her arm there.
Yep.
And she was quite involved there. She is in a grocery store. Please take your place in civil defense.
Turn off my phone. I thought I had it on Do Not Disturb.
Maybe that's when I called you earlier.
All
I
right.
think the next shot is Gunther at one of the Victory Gardens. He was involved with the wartime effort too, and I think that's what that says, Victory Gardens.
Right, and they actually had their own Victory Garden out in Whitefish Township. Okay, we are now up to the Marquette Centennial,
1949.
1949. Marquette Centennial was a big deal, and all the men were growing beards. And in fact, if you were a member of the Rotary or the Kiwanis and you were not growing a beard, you got fined. And there are regular photos in the Mining Journal of how everybody's beards are coming along and how is everyone doing it. Well, beards are fine, but what are the women going to do to match the beards? Most women can't grow a beard to match this. So Anita came up with the idea of the Cameo Club. And I think we've got a next picture. Here we have, if you can see, either one of them. The women are wearing little cameos at their necklace. And so Anita was in charge of costumes for the Centennial. And among other things, she had directories of every women's club in town. She brought the leadership of all the women's clubs to her house and gave them patterns and examples of appropriate historic things that they could sew. Mind you, of course, she couldn't sew herself, but she could certainly tell people to sew. They were all to pledge, if you were a member of the Cameo Club, which cost you 50 cents, you pledged that you were going to, every Friday evening, you would go downtown in costume, all summer long, between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So you'd wear your costume, so we got plenty of use out of them, and you would wear your cameo. She also encouraged local businesses, and that was the thing, they had the Cameo Club. So if the local business sold anything that you might be able to use as part of your costume, whether it was tin to make a hoop skirt, you know, or fabric or anything else, lace. They would have a little cameo club, and so you'd be encouraged to buy your supplies for your costume at that store. She also is putting together a pageant, the Red Plush Pageant. She's helping write music for it and organize it, where we've got all sorts of Charlie Kabogum is doing something. There's Worshiping Pioneers, Marquette Little Women, and so these people are assembling in, you've seen The Music Man, right, where they make a sort of a tableau and then there's some music behind it. So they're making these tableaus with their costumes, and then everybody's singing a song, and there we are doing it. There we are all practicing for all of our singing. And when the actual parade, so this is now the Centennial Parade, and there were, I have the number in front of me, but I can't read it at the moment, a couple hundred floats, and at the end of it was the costume parade. So everybody in their costumes is walking at the end of the Centennial Parade. And there's somebody who grew a beard, and probably those little kids are around. We've got,
We're up to the arts here.
yep, so we have not, you know, here she is an artist, and I don't think I've talked about arts at all yet, right? But almost as soon as she came to town, she started promoting the arts. She really saw Marquette as a provincial place where nobody was cultured. And she was going to change that in her own modest way. And so one of the first things she did is she gathered together a group of women, about 10 of them, and started doing painting classes. And so each week they would study a particular painter and then try to paint in that style. So she did this for just ages and ages and ages, had plenty of people. After her husband died, she actually also started art lessons for kids, and that's where the paint box comes from. If any of you remember Bobby Amin, Bobby Amin got started in her artistic career in the Paint Box Club. She's also putting on all these events. So she's having her women get together for Parisian nights or Chinese nights. Here she is at Parkview School, and everybody is to sort of dress up as a French bohemian of some kind, and they're going to be exhibiting their artwork.
That's one of her paintings that I ended up with. Just a sketch, and I think in the back it says
Sketch lesson.
sketch
Lighthouse.
lesson, 1960.
Right.
So I got to have one of her originals.
Interestingly enough, she said that she never sold her own paintings because even though she fully believed, and we'll talk about this a little more, absolutely artists should be making money from their art. You know, 100% she believed that. She said she never sold her own paintings because if they weren't any good, she didn't want anybody to have them. And if they were good, they were like her children and she wanted to keep them. Which is, so this must be one that she thought was okay, that it was around.
This is her decoupage.
So she took teaching very seriously. And I'm going to find a list of all the things she taught, which she really got into at the bicentennial in 1976. At the bicentennial, she's vice chair of the bicentennial committee at age 80. She has groups that she's teaching doing woodcraft, wood carving, pewter casting and molding, copper bowls, weather vanes, candle dipping and molding, rug making, hooking and braiding, quilting and patchwork, spinning and weaving, wrought iron and blacksmithing, toll or tin decorating, scrimshaw and seaman's crafts, doll restoration, doll houses, miniatures, costumes, and adornment. Not to mention she's got kids collecting quills from crows to make pens or quill points. She's got senior citizens learning quilling and making dolls out of corn husks, clothespins, apple heads, and yarn. Now, we think now, she describes herself as a dilettante. Now, we think now of a dilettante as somebody who's not serious, you know, somebody who just plays around with something. That was not her view. Her view was, and I think maybe this is the NCLL motto, there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff to learn out there, and let's go learn it, and then let's share it. So let's learn it enough that we can teach it. And she took the teaching very seriously. It's not like she's looking at one video on YouTube and, showing it to a bunch of people. So here is a 12-part class that she was preparing to teach in decoupage. Remember what decoupage is? You're cutting out pictures and sort of gluing them onto wood or something. She put together this very detailed syllabus, contemporary artists, various kinds, various systems. She then sent the whole syllabus away to a nationally recognized decoupage expert to say, what do you think of my syllabus? Am I teaching people what they really ought to know about decoupage? So she's putting this kind of work and this kind of effort into everything she's teaching. And so this packet was, like this, with lesson plans for every single lesson.
You see your initials in the bottom, AEM. She has creation is frustration.
Hail and farewell, right.
This is, pottery.
Yeah, so she was, as I said, a huge collection. And the other, besides sort of the nationally recognized button collection.
Yeah, I have a picture of that.
Yeah, there we go. Part of her, very small part of her nationally recognized button collection. She also collected so much pottery that she actually, and a very high quality, that she actually had a show at Northern of her collected pottery. She did say, I knew what it was like to be poor, because I always spent more money than we had. And a lot of it was my fault, because I would complain to Gunther that I was tired of doing the dishes or cooking or doing the laundry, and he'd say, well, let's just hire a girl, because you could hire a girl from Northern for $2 or $3 a week to do all of this for you. So she's doing this, and here she is. She's not in this picture, but this is another of her groups setting up a knitting class.
Yeah, the Yarn Winders, which was a Marquette group. She's very much involved.
Very much involved in a group that continued long after she was gone.
Yeah. Got these from Barb Forsberg, who had a nice collection. 1972.
Right.
The Yarn Winders thing. There's Barb and Anita. And Claire Bennett. Dorothy Tracy. When I started with LSAA, these were my ladies. They had a 24-year-old kid to do stuff. And Claire Bennett, if you remember, her husband was Dr. Matt Bennett, and Dorothy Tracy was our treasurer. So, you can imagine, I sat in these meetings, and when I became president, it was Anita who gave me a book called Robert's Rules of Order, because I knew nothing about that kind of stuff. I still don't. I still have the book though. They even went down to the Detroit Institute of Arts, I think, around the 1970s. This is her at one of the exhibitions.
Yeah, she's taking whole busloads of people on all these trips to art museums. And this is one of them. She also went herself. So Vivian Lossage, who many of you may know, explained to me that she always got the Sunday New York Times so she could read the arts section. So she could keep up what was happening on the arts world. She would take the bus down to Milwaukee to go to the art shows there. During the Columbian exhibition in Chicago in the 30s, she and Gunther rented an apartment down there and then made money by renting out extra rooms in the apartment. So she's always, even though she can't drive, she is going all over the Midwest to bring art to people in various ways.
Now
She was big in theater.
The theater now.
Right. I mean, art isn't enough. All these classes aren't enough. She gets involved in starting various theater groups.
This is out at Deer Track Village.
Oh.
I think there's another shot of some of the plays that were out at Deer Track.
What year might this have been?
Well, let's see. There's a 1959 play right there dated. I'm not sure what these would be around that same time.
Probably, yeah.
Looked like a Midsummer's Night Dream or something that they were doing out there.
And so she had all these costumes. She's just acquiring all these costumes. And one that I recently got from Vivian Lossage and donated to the History Center, one that had been worn in a number of plays, beautiful long silk, sort of silk satin skirt and a very fancy embroidered top, and a secret pocket for a derringer. So if your play required the heroine to pull out a derringer, You've got the right costume for the secret pocket.
Here's all her notes.
So here's something, so as I said, she took everything very seriously. Here she is judging plays, just a high school play contest. And she is going through and making notes on what everybody did. The characters were not good, the blocking could be better, the grandfather was too central. You know, she's just making all these useful notes for these kids who are putting on these plays. She's not just superficial. She's really doing her best. She started the UP Young Authors Conference. And in fact, right up until the time she died, one of her last projects, she had decided the theme for that year's Young Authors Contest was going to be cats. And so she was putting together sort of all collection of literature on cats that would inspire the kids. Promoter. She was a promoter. She promoted the arts. She promoted her queens. She promoted the UP. She was very active in the Upper Peninsula Development Office, and she did in the late 40s, persuaded them to put together this packet. It's a yellow packet about this thick, and what it had in it was brochures from various winter resorts and ski places. And so the idea was that they would put a bunch of these, you know, in the Palmer House Hotel or with travel agents in Chicago or Detroit, so that people would know what sort of activities were available in the winter in the UP. And she designed this. So she is making these skates here and making it look like a satchel, a rucksack with the buckles and everything.
And we found a shot of Ann's mother.
My parents, these are actually my parents.
Oh, your mom and dad.
My mom and dad, right, and this is, you know, Anita was aggressively encouraging people to sell their art and to buy their art. And so here she is, no doubt, persuading my parents.
And do you remember how great her mother was and funny she was? This is out at a glacier glide. And
Right.
That's my photo.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, Kathy took this photo. This
Oh,
is
I
a
love
lovely
it.
photo.
Right.
That was a fun day.
But here she is, and that was Glacier Glide was another LSA,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Another, right. So, making money off her art. She wanted people to make money off their art. She would like to make money off art, even though she wasn't going to sell any of her own. And so what she's proposing, she put this together, the impresario. So what she is saying, she's saying, let's suppose you have a fishing resort over in Iron County somewhere. And what are the women going to do when the guys are out fishing? Well, I can bring to you some skits about historic Iron County, or I can bring to you a craft project. I can bring you all sorts of things that will entertain people or will entertain the guys too if the fishing is terrible. And so please pay me to come and figure out some entertainment for the people at your resort. As far as I know, it never really took off, but she was determined. And somebody, yes, so not by fish alone, entertainment for guests. You know, so here she is trying to say, we can make something happen.
Well, I think this is where Art on the Rocks began, at the Chamber of Commerce. This is a shot of it when it was first built. And this was all in her notes. This is 1959, and it's about the first Art on the Rocks, which was held right by where the Chamber of Commerce and the Father Marquette statue is today. And here's her layout of where the artists were going to be for that first show, with the statue in the middle. And here's a photograph that was taken. And in Time magazine, a natural gas ad turned this into a drawing that was kind of advertising Marquette. This is a look at it right here. So that's one of the original Art on the Rocks. And you can see this was the original photograph of it, and it was turned into this Time magazine ad, 1960. And of course, this was a John Kerbeck painting that he did of one of the early Art on the Rocks. And I happen to have found one of the first movies when Art on the Rocks moved out to Presque Isle. And you remember all the years that was out at Presque Isle Park. This is just a little quick snippet, maybe about 2 or 3 minutes, showing one of the first Art on the Rocks. It used to be you could go anywhere. You could set your booth up over by the band shell, and that's where you see a lot of the people are using the benches of the band shell. Then they formed what was called the Presque Isle Advisory Board, and they decided that too many people were walking on the grass at Presque Isle. So they moved us all right down that straight line, if you remember, from the break wall all the way to the ice cream shop. But this is how Art on the Rocks looked. And again, I did it in '77, and we could set up there still. So it was shortly after '77 that we got put on the cement. And it was tough to have a show out there. I'm the one who moved it to the Lower Harbor. Hate me now if you want. All the people loved Presque Isle, but not for someone running the show. We had to hire buses to bring the people out. There was no restaurant. It was a mess. So that was one of the little movies of Art on the Rocks. In 1985, the LSAA board decided to honor Anita Meyland by building a gazebo out at Presque Isle. And this is the architect, Barry Polson, standing there, Jane Hebel, who was our vice president at the time, and Blaine Betts in the foreground. And again, I was sort of the photographer. These are shots I took during that process. Evelyn Van Dyne on the right. Her husband was a president of one of the banks downtown. Betty Schertz in the middle. Claire Bennett. And the man who actually built the gazebo, a very talented woodworker. And they met out at Presque Isle with Barry and Blaine. And I have all the shots of them building that incredible gazebo that's out there.
And how many people besides me have been to a wedding in that gazebo? Yeah.
Yeah, it's become a landmark.
Jack, what year did Art on the Rocks leave the Father Marquette and the statue and go to?
Well, you know, Diane Cordish just did a whole array of figuring all this out. And what happened was when that magazine came out, they went back to do it out there again.
Okay.
So there was a point where they were at Presque Isle, went back, and then went back to Presque Isle, and it stayed at Presque Isle. I don't remember all the dates, but it did have this, oh, we gotta go back out there because that's what Time Magazine did. So, so I'm not real sure. But this was the middle of the gazebo. It was a ceramic piece that was made by two of my good friends who still run the Presque Isle station, Terry Guilfoy and Mike Horton. And again, from 1985, all the years that sat in the middle of that gazebo, it got a lot of damage, and I think it's not there anymore, but I took a photograph of it. And this is when they dedicated that. A couple, in fact, I think Christine Sari came up with these slides after we gave the talk of Anita out there at the gazebo. And there she is. Do you remember what year she died? Someone asked me.
She died in 1990, I've got it right here.
Yeah, someone asked me earlier and I couldn't remember.
She died in March 7th, 1995. Just right before her 98th birthday. So 2 days after her 98th birthday.
So this is 85, so 10 years after this.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So in these pictures, she's in her late 80s already.
So we're talking about who's been to a wedding. Boy, who hasn't? There's my daughter getting married at the gazebo to Josh Wales. I think they just celebrated their 14th anniversary.
Oh, gosh.
Gave me 2 grandkids. It's pretty cool. And of course, it's been an art piece for a lot of us. Just the beauty. This is a shot I took out there years ago. Now, I was going to stop the show right now. Oh, this is going to be these were going to be the last 2 shots. Anita was a grand marshal in a parade. Barb Forsberg is sitting in the car. I don't know the date, but that was Dick's Family Food. I think that's the food co-op building now. And then I think this was going to be my last shot when we say goodnight to everybody. But since you're all still paying attention, I ended our talk the first time with a lot of Art on the Rocks. And if you don't mind, I'll just blow through a little bit of my Art on the Rocks history, because this is where we used to be out at Presque Isle. And you know, it was tough to have it out there because of the wind. A few times it rained so hard that the water came right down. We had water in our booths that thick. And then at the end of the show, you had to clean every piece of artwork because it was so dirty and sandy. And anybody who was on this part of the show had to have sandbags. So we had to bring sandbags out there to hold their booths down. So you can see why once the trees got big at Matson Park, I decided to move it out there. But these are some of the shots I took over the years, just to remember. You know, it's still going today. LSAA, who Anita started our group, next year is our 75th anniversary.
Wow.
An art group lasting that long.
And they do a scholarship in Anita's name.
Yeah, we established this guy. Oh, there's my booth.
All
I had one of the best corner spots. I don't know how I
I
got
don't know how you
it.
managed
Since I
that.
set up the show, I
must have
gave
known
myself a
someone.
good spot. And I would show some of my historic shots, some of my color work. So I was not just showing old photographs, I had some of my work out there too. And this is our crew from many of the years. I don't know if you remember Mary Earl in the middle of the group there. She had a tragic accident, fell down some steps and had a brain aneurysm and passed away in her 60s. And Mary Van Landshut on the far left took it over, and this was the crew from one of the early Art on the Rocks. Oh, there she is. That was our fearless leader. She made Art on the Rocks so fantastic, a great promoter like Anita, but tragically we lost her in 2011. And just think of all the great people that have been out there. Here's Candy Miller. I got shots of Candy getting the awards, Jason. So yeah, I gave a little bit of, in fact, that's Terry Guilfoyle on the right. He was a judge one year. These are two of the artists that have been around as long as I have out at the Presque Isle Station.
Yeah.
And they have been mentoring artists for years out there. Maggie Lynn, Vicki Phillips, all the artists that used to be at Presque Isle, and it's still an art haven today. And that's Mary Van Landshut, she ran the show. And here's where it is today. I think the artists are happy, plenty of room. They can drive right to their booth, take down simple. So I'm a hero to the artists. But for everybody who goes, why isn't it a Presque Isle still? So here's some shots I did of Art on the Rocks. And,
Okay.
yeah, there's Kathy. That was one of our presidents there, and that's what we call Pebble Corner for kids. And that's my daughter Kelsey,
Oh, goodness.
who's now teaching 5th grade at Cherry Creek School and just turned 40. So,
Amazing how that happens.
and boy, I used to make her pass out posters with her mom, my wife, when I was above Donkers, so I had to put a little bit of Kelsey in there. And still today, she's out there helping.
Nice.
These were just some of the art parties of some of our past presidents. I'm gonna blow through these. And I'm gonna get to my fun part, which, oh, there's Diane Kordich.
Oh, yeah.
She's still very much involved. She just spent months going through every bit of records from LSAA. They were stored right out by Tourist Park in that storage unit. And 2 years ago, they had a fire. And it was right after we got everything out of there. That whole storage unit burned down. It's all stored at the Marquette History Center now, the whole history of our group, thanks to Diane Kordich. There we are when we gave $15,000 to the city of Marquette for the gallery in the basement of the library. And that was our board at the time. Retha Tweedy was in charge of the arts and culture. And she's got Judy Johnson and Vicki Phillips, John Kerbeck. There's Kathy again, Pat Hicks. These were people that were on my board for years. And we got a gallery down there. And then recently they changed the name to the Dio Gallery,
Yay.
which was kind of neat. There it is.
Yay.
So we were kind of proud. So here's the first Art on the Rocks t-shirt. Nobody has this but me.
Yeah.
And a guy came to me, his name was Mike Driscoll, and he showed me this design. He said, I want to do an Art on the Rocks t-shirt. I said, go ahead, you did it. He sold them out there. And from then on, we did our own Art on the Rocks t-shirt. So here's the very first one. And I love this one. Look at that. The cliffs and the little boat on the bottom. So I've collected about every Art on the Rocks t-shirt. You can see I've worn a lot of these. You see the bleach marks. Here was a great one when we had an anniversary, our 25th year, and John Heath did this t-shirt with the Art on the Rocks thing. So, and this is one of my favorites. Look at this one. Art on the Rocks, people carrying. So I ended our show with, and it was the LSAA group was there, so I thought they'd appreciate seeing all the years of Art on the Rocks. Now, this was the 1 year, actually 2 years, that somebody could do a cheaper t-shirt. They said, oh, you're paying so much to get them screen printed. We had this thing called a decal or a iron-on shirt. And if you still have those shirts, this is how they look today. I kind of told everybody, you'll be sorry. And this was another year's shirt, totally invisible. So we went back to silk screening again. Here's 2008. So who else would collect Art on the Rocks t-shirts? I still got them in my closet. They're in a big white bag. And if some museum wants them or some history center, look at all these. And we still have a contest with a poster every year, so artists can design our posters. And here's one. This is the logo we're now using. Kind of became a permanent one on all our things. So
I have
anything more to tell? Oh, you got a nice little ending. Why don't you give that?
So, she talked about how she did so much stuff, and she was the first to say she did not do it herself, that she had lots of help. And again, Vivian Losich explained how this would work. She couldn't drive, right? Anita couldn't drive, so she would call up Vivian or somebody else and say, can you help me move some stuff over to the women's clubhouse? So all of a sudden, there is Vivian and Anita and all this stuff, and then as long as we're at the women's clubhouse, let's help set it all up, right? And let's have a ride back, and by the way, here's these 5 other things that need to be done. Anita said, I don't know whether I'm a pusher or what happened, but I'll start with business and professional women, and then 4 years from now, I'll be president. That happened in so many situations. I don't know whether I was a pusher and I pushed myself ahead, or whether I had the ability. I think it's fair to say both were true. One example was the UP Crafts and Natives Industry Council. She started the Fine Arts Division at the County Fair in 1940. And she was, 1 year she was not on the program at all for the UP Arts and Native Crafts thing. The next year she was presenting. The next year she was showing something, and by the 4th year she was president. So it really did happen pretty much that way. Somebody said she had a sizable number of women my age with whom she had significant relationships. She knew everybody, she connected everybody, she made everybody work. Jack described how he got roped in, and she was roping plenty of people in to all of these things. People, she would say, other people said that above all, she was a collector and a promoter of people. So a lot of people said to me when I was talking about doing this, she took me under her wing, or she made me believe in myself, or I never could have done the things I did if she had not encouraged me. So she would encourage you to do that, and somewhere I have here a lovely quote at the end. With luck, I can find it. It'll be a shame if I can't. Yes, so her payoff, so this is a newspaper article, and among other things, she wrote a regular column in one of the newspapers, because why not? Because she wasn't doing anything else. I would only say that if I had a hobby, it would be teaching. The gleam in a student's eye when I see he understands or enjoys a word of praise is worth a fistful of gold to me. So that was her goal, was to find people with talent, ferret it out, whether it's the strawberry queen or the dairy queen or the artist or our friend Jack Dio. Bring them along, and she would ask everybody to do the same for all the people in town, to always be looking for the next generation of leaders and helping them along. We're happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Did she have more than one child? She was there with that baby carriage.
Right, she only had one child, Charlotte, and Charlotte died before she did. Charlotte actually had cancer and died at age 62. Charlotte had 3 children. One interesting thing we discovered, I started doing this when we were doing artists at one of the Michigan Marquette History Center cemetery tours, and discovered that she did not have a grave marker. And Gunther had one, but it was just a military grave marker. And so we found out where it was and did a speech there. But in the meantime, I was able to get in touch with her daughters, who I very, very vaguely remember from when I was a kid, her granddaughters. And they said, we're going to take care of that. And so now there is a lovely marker there for both of them.
What cemetery is it?
At Park Cemetery. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a nice dinner with them. They all came to Marquette. We shared this program with them, and I gave them quite a few of the photographs. Little did they know I found another 200 or 300 negatives, but
And that's why we're recording this, is mostly so we can make it available to them.
yeah.
Were there other socialites that she included in her quest for expanding on arts and culture? We have a lot of prominent names in Marquette.
Yeah, Jane Hebel was, if we had a fountain named after her. She was very important in the arts. Anybody else you could think of? Well, Vivian Lassich.
Who? Holly
Yeah,
Aldrich.
Holly Aldrich. She was a part of this right from the
She was
beginning.
certainly a part of the community.
Yeah, she did jewelry.
Beautification Committee, name.
The beautification.
Kelly's.
Emily?
What?
Kelly.
Kelly, Barb Kelly.
Barb
Oh,
Kelly.
Barb
yeah.
Kelly. Barb Kelly is
Yeah.
one of the people who said she took me under my wing. She told me I
Okay.
could believe in myself.
Yeah.
I have mentored other people because Anita mentored me.
What a difference Barb made.
Yeah,
Right.
yes, huge.
Right.
The arts.
And I will do one more personal remark here. This is from my mother's own memoirs. When my mother came to town, my father was an English professor, and the wife of the head of the English department, Helen Thomas, sort of the department head's wife, would take the new wives under their wing. And she told my mother that she was going to go nowhere in this town unless she A, learned how to play bridge, and B, joined the right study groups. All right? And my mother never did either of those things, but she said, Anita told me I could be myself. And so, for everybody in Marquette who is able to be themselves, we have Anita to thank.
Yeah.